Okay, so you've already learned about the different benchmarks. We're going to revisit those real quickly, and then I'm going to actually show you how to apply those benchmarks and use them when you're determining what you should measure an object with, which unit of measurement you should use. Should you use a tape measure? Should you use a meter stick or yardstick? Those are the questions that I'm going to help you answer. Should you use a ruler which has 12 inches, or should you use inches, or should you use centimeters? So that's what I'm going to help you do, is to think through that when you look at an object and figure out what you should measure with. What unit of measurement should you use? All right, so let's explore that first. First thing we're going to do is revisit our benchmarks, the things that we store in our mind to help us remember what unit of measurement goes with what and about how big that unit of measurement is. So the first benchmark was a meter or a yardstick. So if I think about an object and I'm thinking, ooh, if that object is about the size of the width of my door, if it's about the size of the width of the door, then I know I'm going to use a meter or a yardstick. So, for example, if I know an object is about the width of my door, I'm going to use a meter or yardstick. I know that this is close to the width of my door. It's pretty big. So I know that I should probably use a meter or a yardstick. All right? This is a meter or a yardstick. So I'm going to use this to measure it. This side I'm using right here is inches. On the other side is centimeters. All right? And it's denoted on there as to what it is. It says mm and cm on this side. And on this side it says inches. So I'm going to measure this with a yardstick or a meter stick because it's about the size of the door. So I take it and I look at it. I can see, oh, it is about 24 inches. Almost 24 inches exactly. So this is about 24 inches. I can estimate that. I know that I wouldn't want to use a ruler. A ruler is from my elbow to my wrist, and that would just be too small. So I want to get something that's a little bit bigger, which would be a meter or a yardstick. I wouldn't need a tape measure for this because a tape measure is a lot bigger than that. So this is about 24 inches. And I knew to use a meter or yardstick because of my benchmark, which is a door. It's about the size of a door. Now I can see here that this TV is bigger than my door. So I probably wouldn't want to use this meter or yardstick because it's bigger than it. All right? I could use it. I could just repeat it over and over. Put it right there and then repeat it. I could use that, but I'll show you a better way next. Okay? So let's take a look at our next benchmark. Our next benchmark is a foot. We said that a foot is from our wrist to our elbow. So any object that is about that size, we would want to use a ruler. A ruler has 12 inches. So I know that this object, which is my Darth Vader mask, I know that this is about that size. So I would use a ruler to measure this because it will help me measure it. Or it will get me close. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to measure my Darth Vader mask. Remember, there's two sides. My inches side, which is which is about the bent size of my thumb, and then the other side is centimeters. So I'm going to use inches to measure this mask. So I'm going to start right there at the 0 line. Right there's the 0 line. And I can say that it's about 10 inches wide. About 10 inches. So I knew to use a ruler to measure this mass because I use my benchmark, which is wrist to my elbow. It tells me for a ruler. This one is not quite that size, but it's bigger than my next benchmark. So I know that this is close to or about the size of my wrist to my elbow. So I would use my ruler to measure this too. Rulers have 12 inches. Each one has an equal part. So I'm going to measure this box. I'm going to start at the 0 line. I can see that it's about 6.5 inches. It's about 6.5 inches. So this fits my ruler benchmark, my elbow to my wrist. Okay? So that's the next benchmark. That's how you apply that. Let's move on to the next one. The next one. Our next benchmark is an inch benchmark. That's these tiny little marks on a ruler. I know that my benchmark for an inch is from my bent elbow to my tip of my thumb, or my bent thumb. That is the width of an inch. That is about 1 inch. So I know that any object that's close to this, I should be using inches, okay? So I know that this highlighter is a lot smaller than the benchmark above, which is the ruler. See how much smaller it is than that? So that clearly means I'm going to have to use lots of inches. So I'm going to want to use something that's smaller to measure this. So I'm going to use inches, these tiny marks on here. Remember, two sides. I'm on the inches side. Always make sure you're on the right side. I'm going to line up at that 0 line. I can see that this is about 5 inches. That's about 5 inches long. I knew to use inches because it's way smaller than my foot benchmark. It's not quite the same size as my inch benchmark, but it's way smaller than that one. And then the stapler, same thing. It's a lot smaller than my 12-inch benchmark, or my ruler benchmark. So I'm going to use my inches. It's about 7 inches. About 7 inches. All right, so that's how we figure out all the way to those benchmarks. Let's go to the next benchmark, which is centimeters. That is about the width of your pinky. So objects that are about the width of your pinky or smaller than this. So they have to be smaller than the bent part of your thumb and about the size of your pinky. That's going to be centimeters. That's the other side of the ruler, okay? So now I'm going to measure a couple items. So I know that this Karate Kid guy, I probably could measure him in inches or centimeters. But I'm just going to measure his head. And his head is about the width of my pinky. So I'm going to measure Karate Kid here. And I'm going to say that his head is about 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to measure Spider-Man's head. I know that his head is much smaller than an inch, but it's probably pretty close to the width of my pinky. So I'm going to go ahead and measure, and his head is also about 1 centimeter. So when you're using your benchmarks, you want to think about the width of your door first. If it's about the width of your door, use a meter or a yardstick. If it is about the length of your wrist to your elbow, if it's about that size or smaller than your door, you're going to want to use a ruler. 1 foot, 12 inches. If an object is less than your wrist to your elbow, but more than the bent part of your thumb, you're going to want to use an inch. You're going to want to use the inch part of your ruler right here. But if an object is smaller than the bent part of your thumb and about the size of your pinky, then you want to use centimeters. Okay? And then the last thing, for any objects that are bigger than the door, any objects that are bigger than your door, you want to use a tape measure for anything that's bigger than your door. All right. Have fun, guys. Happy measuring.